Hello, Ben. Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Full On Football. On today's show, we're going to be discussing whether the Manchester City Liverpool rivalry of the last 4 or 5 years is the best rivalry in Premier League history.
Well, that's a massive statement. I'm not sure what Man United and Arsenal fans will have to say about that, but you tell me.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the basis of my point. I think the two main ones that I can that come to the forefront are obviously the Manchester United Arsenal rivalry of probably the late nineties, probably 98 to about 2005, which was a ferocious rivalry. It'll probably be unrivaled now in terms of that ferocity, nastiness, needle. I don't think you'll see that anymore. I don't think we've seen that really since, and you probably won't see it again on the basis that football's changed and it's battling. It's more football's at the forefront. Battling sort of takes a back seat.
What are we judging this on? Because obviously people are out there are going to be saying, what about the North London derby? What about Man United Liverpool? I'd argue Man United Liverpool is probably the biggest game in English football. I think. I think that's the two biggest clubs meeting. Um, local derbies all over. So what are we judging this on? What makes this the biggest rivalry?
I think the what puts this up there, and the reason why I would argue it perhaps is the basis that both teams, in my opinion, over the last 4 years, have been the two best teams in Europe. They, which is obviously a requirement. It's all good saying the North London derby. It's all good saying the Merseyside derby, whatever. Have those teams been two elite sides at any point in the Premier League history? I would argue no. These two sides are elite sides at the top of their game for a 4 year period. Two of the best teams in Europe, probably the two best teams in Europe, I would argue. And their styles are not compromised in these big games. What I mean by that is Liverpool Man City do not go away from anything that they want to do in these big games. There's no doing a job. There's no parking the bus. There's no anything like that. They both go at it hammer and tong every single game. The quality of football, the relentlessness, the energy, the speed is all at such an elite level that I have never seen in my lifetime. And that is the fundamental reason why I think this is the elite rivalry that we've seen in the last 30 years.
So what I'm hearing there is it's not in terms of like ferociousness and things like that. It's in terms of the quality of the rivalry. The quality of the rivalry is the best in English football, in Premier League history. We'll go Premier League history. And that's what I'm hearing from that. The fact that neither side compromises, they have their DNA, their style, and they don't move away from it. And yeah, they'll go hammer and tongue. They really will. They'll go completely all in. Whereas you think of the Man United Arsenal, I think that's probably the big one that stands out for challenging it. Obviously, two sides for probably best part 7 or 8 years, always finishing first and second in the league, weren't they? Always right at it. One of them wins the FA Cup, one of them wins the league. But was very much what stood out for me there. You're talking about the styles. And Man United, you hear Gary Neville frequently talking about it. When we played Arsenal, we didn't want to play a game of football. We want to make it ugly because if we take them on at football, we'll lose. So it was very much playing Arsenal. We're going to change what we're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I look back at that period. You would have quite often Man United would go away from probably a 4-4-2 that they were known for. They might get an extra man in midfield. They might play John O'Shea in midfield, for example. They would make it a battle, like you said. They would make it a. Not saying they didn't play good football and they picked their moments. And I'm not knocking United for that. But there was very much an element of compromising, of changing what they were best at, and I would go forward to perhaps even the Jose Mourinho, the Man United Chelsea rivalry that followed that, despite the fact that Chelsea had it over United for the initial couple of years under Jose, and then it turned on its head where United won 3 league titles in a row. There was still an element of Jose Mourinho playing a false nine where he wouldn't actually play a striker. He would play very defensive. Man United would do something similar. We'd have John O'Shea midfield. We might have Ji-Sung Park doing a job in these big games. And you don't see that now. You don't see that with Klopp. You don't see that with Pep. Pep might try and overcomplicate it, but the fundamentals of what he wants to do remains the same. And no, there's never a moment where that game on Sunday. What a game it was, by the way. We haven't gone into that yet. But 5 minutes to go, no team was settling for a draw, were they? There was never more than a split second taken for a throw-in. There was never a moment where they broke and only 2 players went forward. They were still going for it. Every single, every man on the pitch was going at it 100%. And that's why I thought it was just incredible to watch, really.
Roy Keane, you listening? You're not in a top rivalry? What do you think about that? Honestly, though, you're talking about the quality of the football and, like you just said, going for it right till the very end. And as I mentioned at the start, I think Liverpool and Man United, I do stand by, is probably the biggest game in terms of they're the 2 biggest clubs in England, biggest amount of fans on the fan base for both of them. But what I would say about that rivalry is it's always been that, certainly in my lifetime, they've never really clashed at the top. There was that sort of one season under Benitez where Liverpool finished second, 2008, I think it was. But other than that, it's generally been Man United at the top and Liverpool not as near it. And then in the seasons where Liverpool challenged, it wasn't usually to Man United. It was usually to like Man City or Chelsea or whatever. And like now, obviously Man United aren't at the pomp and Liverpool are. They've never really clashed at the same time at the top, if you know what I mean. It just so happens that this era of the last 4 or 5 years has been about Liverpool and Man City. And I know that people will say that Man City have won sort of 3 of the last 4 leagues, but Liverpool have won a Champions League as well, and in one of those seasons, all right, Liverpool didn't win the league, but they did get 97 points. So that was the 3rd highest in history at the time.
Absolutely. And that's the point, that they are both that season where they won it by a point. Man City, the quality that season. Liverpool, as much as the history books say they didn't win anything, they didn't. You can't argue with that. They couldn't have done much more. They could not have done much more. They would have won the league in terms of points. They would have won it every other season bar one. It just happened to be that they were up against an incredible Man City side at that time. Obviously, this season as well, it's looking as though, although Chelsea are top at the moment, and you can't knock that, I think it's going to be those 2 come the end of the season that will be fighting out. Liverpool, obviously, if they get injuries, it could soon change. But provided they keep everyone fit, I think it will be those 2 to beat. Going back to the Man United Arsenal rivalry, Ben, what would you? Obviously, that nastiness, that battle that you spoke about, that Roy Keane loves to talk about, being in the trenches. Does that weigh more in your mind than the football and the intensity that we're seeing now from City and Liverpool?
Well, I think obviously anything historic, nostalgia's had time to grow. When something's current, the nostalgia hasn't kicked in yet. It takes 10 years of looking back on it to realise how good something was. I think anyway. I think that a lot of things in life, and it's obviously probably the number 1 Premier League rivalry in history up until this point. Whether you could argue, I think there's a good case for Liverpool Man City, definitely not in terms of ferociousness and the actual rivalry, perhaps not in terms of the battle, if you will, the hatred of each team. I don't think it rivals it on that. But I think if we're talking about the quality of the football, the 2 best teams, it probably does, because I feel like the current Liverpool or Man City would have beat both of those sides, personally.
Well, they'd have beat the Invincibles.
Yeah, I think so. I think both
many people regard to be
City
the best team we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, they drew a lot of games. They drew about 12 games in that season, and there was they had a lot of luck along the way. And did they do well in Europe? Did they win domestic cups that season as well? I think it was just the league. So ultimately, yes, they were very good, but in a season where, for example, Liverpool get 97 points and win the Champions League, all right, Man United fans will say 99, they won the treble. Factually, that's a better season. When we actually look behind the scenes, you'd probably say Liverpool, dare I say, a bit controversial, had a better season in terms of game-by-game basis and the level that they were actually at. It just so happens Man United obviously won the league with, the best part of 15 points less, won the Champions League, won the FA Cup. I wouldn't say they were as good as Liverpool were.
No, I take your point, and I remember Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher doing a pound-for-pound team, comparing the 2 seasons, and there wasn't a lot in it. I think it was 6-5 in Man United's favour, but I do take your point on that, especially Obviously, the eras were different. If we look at that Man United Arsenal rivalry of that time from the late 90s to sort of 2005, does it help when people think of that? Oh, yeah, how good it was. Obviously, the Arsenal Invincibles, the Man United treble winners. It was literally the title was shared between those two teams for about 8 years straight. Does it help that they were literally the only two teams that really had a hope of winning the league before a ball was kicked? It was out of Arsenal and Man United. I know you can say the last couple of years it has been out of Liverpool and Man City, but you still had, I think you have a much stronger league now than you did then. And that people might, that's controversial because Arsenal have been a poor side for a while, but they're still Arsenal Football Club. They've still got a good team. Tottenham the same, Chelsea, Manchester United. You've got, for me, a much more competitive top 6, top 8 than you perhaps had then. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is more competitive now. And obviously, start of this season doesn't look like Man United are in it, although it is still early. Things change. But you've definitely got 3 sides that are going to be in a title race this year. And obviously, like I said, start of the season, it was 4. You probably don't get that historically. So no, I think it's fair, but it is incredible that they were dominant for so long. I remember growing up and it was Man United would win the league and Arsenal would win the FA Cup, or it'd be the other way around, and it was every season. It was relentless. I have to respect that. I'm just talking about the actual quality of the football. And I do think you mentioned the treble winners, the Invincibles, things like that. They do have a tendency for us to overrate these types of things. Not saying it's not incredible achievements, because they are. The trebles. No, the treble's the biggest achievement in English football for me. Winning that treble, I think that is the biggest achievement in English football. What I'm saying is, personally, I think the Man City side of now are better than that Man United team. Just because they haven't won the treble doesn't change that for me. Now, it is, as I said, it's the biggest achievement in English football, but that doesn't concrete make them the best side. For me, a lot of people will disagree with that. I'm okay with that, but for me, it doesn't make them the best side. Circumstances, they did it that season, fair play to them. But I think even things like the Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira in the tunnel and all of those types of things, iconic Premier League moment. And we've talked a lot in the past about moments.
A slice of pizza.
Yeah, slice of pizza. Yeah. But moments having a tendency to make you nostalgic and overrate things and not call things as they actually were. And that's where I think at times it can be just a tad overrated.
In terms of then focusing on the things that actually are and the things we can actually see, as opposed to, like you said, the hearing, the nostalgia, the stories, bringing back, you seeing videos about the tunnel, about the sendings off, about the Martin Keown elbow down the back of Van Nistelrooy's shoulder and all that when he misses the last minute penalty, things like that. Obviously, we see that and we see it year on year. You've probably seen that every year for the last 10 years on social media, on Sky Sports, wherever it may be. Talking about the here and now, what you can actually see. Have you ever seen? For me, this is. I mean this. It pains me to say it. I've never seen, in terms of the quality, a better game of football, a better period of fixtures than the last 4 years of Man City, Liverpool. I do think the quality that we see is honestly on another planet, and I watch it, and I generally do not want the game to end.
Yeah, obviously you talk about Sunday in that second half, and the second half was as good a game of football as you're going to get all season, just on the first half, not so much, but the second half. And you're looking back at the fixtures they've had, even in the Champions League ties, Liverpool, talk about the Champions League tie, obviously that's not Premier League, but the year Liverpool got to the final and lost to Real Madrid, 2017-18, Liverpool beat Man City 3-0 at Anfield, blew them away in the first half an hour, held on 1-3-0, and they went to the Etihad, and people still had Man City just as likely to go through as Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? Man City went 1-0 up within sort of a couple of minutes, and it was very much check your phone. The bookies have got them as sort of favourites to go through here. Do you know what I mean? That's the level that we're at, and obviously at that point there was a golfing class between the two. But Liverpool still seemed to have, obviously, beat them home and away in Champions League, beat them at home in the league, a little bit of a hold over them on a head-to-head basis. And I feel like some of the games that we've had over the years, the intensity of it, the quality of it is just like I've never seen before. It's the best sides in Europe, as you said. They're definitely, over the last 4 years, I think 2 of the best 3. in Europe. It's those two and Bayern Munich, I think, are the best three in Europe for a consistent period.
Is it the end of this rivalry, do you think? Or do you reckon they've got another year in them? Do you think by the end of the year it might start to wane? Because although I've said a lot on the show the last few weeks that I don't think Liverpool, I think Liverpool are coming to the end of an era. And I do think that squad needs refreshing, and it surely it can't go on forever. But from what we've seen this season so far, it can it? It doesn't seem to have waned too much, albeit perhaps 5% from what they were, say, 2 years ago.
I don't know. Don't know the answer. I don't know if they will be or not. I can't envisage it going much further than 2 years at the level that it's currently at. But by that point, it would have been sort of 6 years of high intense rivalry. So it's incredible. So in terms of longevity, I'd go Arsenal, Man United. In terms of the ferocity and the nostalgia and all of these things, I'd go Arsenal, Man United. There's quite a few perspectives where I would pick I think it's more iconic. But again, I think you have to allow time to grow in your mind, some of these things. But in terms of just purely on the quality of the football, this is the highest rivalry in Premier League history for me.
Is it underpinned by the managers though? Do you think that's the sole reason? If these squads stay the same in the summer, but Pep leaves, Klopp leaves, they both move on. Do you think the rivalry is? Do you think that's it? Do you think that's where you draw a line under it? Because I can't really see it staying the same, despite the players. You know, Liverpool may sign Haaland in the summer, and Man City may sign Harry Kane. If both managers leave, I still think that rivalry just loses a bit of that. I think it will drop a level of intensity just by those two not being in the building.
100%. What's more fascinating than anything, I dare use this word because it'll make you laugh, but it's the philosophies of both managers, you know? Yeah. It is, isn't it? It's a clash of philosophies, and I love that. And obviously with the managers going, you have all the same players, it wouldn't matter. The philosophy's gone, and it is a totally different game, totally different rivalry. So I think you're absolutely spot on. So if I had to lock in an answer for you, what is the greatest rivalry in Premier League history? Is it this one, or is it Arsenal, Man United?
In terms of longevity and ferocity, it's got to be the Man United Arsenal. But in terms of quality of football, two elite sides at their pomp, non-compromising tactics, attitudes, intensities, it has to be this one. If I was to choose one to rewatch, if I was to choose a period of games to rewatch, would it be the early Man United Arsenal rivalry or this one that we're seeing right now? As much as it pains me to say it, because I don't have a horse in the race, it would be this one we're seeing right now.
So if I get you a ticket to either one, you choose this one.
Yeah, from a a purist neutral, if I was a neutral, then yeah, I think it'd have to be.
So I think that says everything you need to know. I think factually, this is the greatest in terms of quality. I want to repeat that. In terms of quality, this is the greatest rivalry in Premier League history, and we are blessed to be seeing it right now. Cheers for joining me today, mate. And I hope that rubbed some salt in the wounds.